Hey, here's your heads up. Do you ever have horrible thoughts about things? Where you have an argument inside your head about other people maybe, or other things happening in the world, and it causes you to act and behave in ways you don't particularly like? I'm going to share you mine, and I'll show you what I did to let it go and to be different. So come with me for a change after this. Hey, this is the Personal Development Unplugged podcast, where we use hypnosis. Yeah, hypnosis. NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. Don't worry what it is. It's just a mass of processes that we're going to get you to change. Change to let go of anxiety, low self-esteem, and create massive supreme inner confidence. But that's confidence in your competence and competence in your confidence, which means you can do anything and be safe, to enjoy the world as it should be, with you at the helm, creating the life that you want. That's what this podcast is about. You, and being the best you could be, singing from your real voice, aligned with your mission, aligned with your passions. That's what it's about. So if you're interested in letting go of anxiety, if you're interested in letting go of fear, guilt, all those blooming syndromes, imposter syndromes, and every little bit of the mind which is negative, then have a listen here, because we've got some wonderful processes and lots of good conversations between you and me to get us both thinking in such wonderful ways. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Just take the chance to have a listen.
This is Personal Development Unplugged with Paul Clough.
In simplicity, there is genius.
In simplicity, there is genius.
Hey, how we doing? How we doing, my friend? The longer podcast. And I'm back in my little old studio, which is so nice. I haven't been here for a little while now. And it feels like coming home, really. It does. It's like my little baby, and I'm back here. But anyway, I wanted to get personal today. A little personal, because I don't know where we're going to go with it and what we're going to learn from it. But I wanted to just share with you some stuff I was going through. It was a struggle. And I wanted to share a few things to know that everyone has a struggle, doesn't matter where we are, what we've learned. Things come up and blindside us occasionally. So here's a few things. Now, listen to these words, because they are lovely words. The world is my mirror. That's lovely sentiments and lovely words, lovely line. You see, a long time ago, I used to think things like, my eyes are the windows of my world. They're lovely words too, aren't they? And I didn't realize until just, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, although the issue had been going on for a lot longer, but it didn't hit me till then. Like these sort of an epiphany, I guess. But I didn't realize I'd been struggling with those two sentences. Because these were notes I'd made a long time ago. Not the world is my mirror. That was one that came a little while ago. But my eyes, the windows of the world, it was such a lovely thing I wrote about. Nice words, as I say. Nice sentiments. A bit like those memes we see, aren't they? You know, I'm not really great with those memes, those little lovely sentences that people say. Some of them are really, really good, and they're done with genuine intention. And I think sometimes we can see the intention of someone putting a post up with some lovely words, lovely sentiments, because they're doing it from the heart and they're doing it to share, to get you to think. But there's an awful lot that is or has the LAM syndrome. What's that, Paul? LAM syndrome? Have I got it? Oh, can I have it? You don't want it. You don't want it. Because it's look at me syndrome. We see it so much on Facebook and things like that, don't we? Look at me. So, you know, it's not do as I do, but do as I say, I think, sometimes. But anyway, let's get back to me. Let's get back to me, because it is all about me, isn't it? LAM. Like, I wanted to share with you my personal struggle because I was experiencing some negative emotions and with that associated behaviours and thoughts in my mind and my words in my mind, and I call those behaviours as well. You know, my internal voice was going on. It's all very angry, and when it was inside, it's not very nice. And I know that with self-sovereignty, it's what we think as well, what we read and what we think, all about this self-sovereignty, looking at how we live our lives, what we ingest and what we think. And this wasn't good because once I got that like it was like a vitriol in my head about other people. And then it turned to anger, and that came outside, and then that became hurtful. And it seemed right at the time, and that's a stupid bloody thing. It seemed right at the time because I was in that emotion. And I had to get out of that emotion to see what was happening. What about you? You see, I know we're talking about me at the moment, but I wonder, this is a do with. This is a conversation, not a monologue. And although we can't physically talk to each other, we can do it sort of, can't we? What about you? Have you ever experienced things like that where something happens on a continuous basis? That is, for me anyway, it was. I was seeing things happen, seeing things being done, and having this anger and argument in my head. And it even, for me, was happening when I wasn't seeing it. So it was continuing on. If I heard something or I was just doing something, it was coming into my head, and it was pissing me right off, to be honest. It was really pissing me off because I knew it wasn't right and I wasn't stopping it. And you see, if you just think back, let's just go back to you again. What about you? Can you think of times when you've had that? Because I want to go through what I did of a sort, just to change it. Because at the end of the day, it did you no bloody good, or did me no bloody good at all. It wasn't doing me any good. In fact, it was pushing barriers away, pushing people away, hurting the people I love. Didn't like that bit, did we? Well, I didn't. And also, you know, this synchronicity, this thing, coincidence, it just happens. You know, you're thinking about something and something comes along. And it's stuff I've known about, read about, talked about, perception and projection. What we perceive, we project. But sometimes what we perceive is projected actually from us. And then I got back to that sentence. The world is my mirror. So what I'm seeing, that reflection out there in the world, because my eyes are the windows of the world, but nice words, but when you think about I'm reflecting the stuff I don't like is what I'm projecting, because that's how I'm perceiving it. I thought, shit, didn't like that. And the more I thought about it, the more I didn't like it. But the more I felt I owned it. Because why would I have those type of thoughts if it wasn't trying to teach me something? Because we always say, a teacher turns up when you most need it. And examples in life come up at the right time to teach us something. So what is this trying to teach me? Other than I've got these horrible bloody thoughts in my head. No, is it coming from me? So I thought about this for a bit, as I do a lot of thinking sometimes. Maybe too much, I don't know. But I thought, there's only one place to go, Cluffy, and that's your puzzle book. And this might resonate a little bit, but it may not, I don't know. But it may get you to think of other things as well. So I went to my puzzle book, and I said, and I've even got it here for you, I thought, I'm going to go down what I'm perceiving. And it was selfishness, ungratefulness, entitlement. And I thought, what is that? That's what I'm perceiving, but what have I got inside? What does that cause me to do? And it made me feel anger, resentment, and disappointment. And I thought, no, hang on a minute. Anger, resentment, disappointment, that's not the projection or perception, because they're the effects of it. So why work on the anger, resentment, and disappointment? Because they're simply effects. They've been triggered by those perceptions. So if projections and perceptions are there to teach us what we're perceiving is something inside me that I'm projecting. So in some ways, I've got selfishness inside me, ungratefulness inside me, an entitlement inside me, and I couldn't find them. I really couldn't find them. I was spending time in my puzzle book, time quietly, and just nothing was really happening. And you see, I thought to myself, and this is where it might resonate with you. See, I thought to myself, well, I could just ignore all that because I didn't really like it that much. I can ignore all that and simply go back to blaming others for causing me to think this way and think that way, or think this way and act that way. So act with anger. Get disappointed, which fuels the anger. Get resentful, which fuels that anger. And then say and do the things I didn't like about myself. About myself. Where did that come from? You see, if I was to ignore all that and blame others for causing and triggering off those things inside me, that's a great excuse, isn't it? What a great excuse. That lets me off the hook. It's got bugger all to do with me. Therefore, it's not my fault. So I can get as angry, resentful and disappointed as I like because it's not my fault. Well, that's all bullshit, isn't it? Because it was a reason, an excuse. And if you're living on that excuse, that effect side of life, the reason side of life, it means you're not at cause. And if you're not at cause, you haven't learned. And when you learn, things disappear. So I had to reflect again. Bloody reflection and thinking, it's getting on my nerves now, but had to be done. So I said to myself, well, okay, if what I perceive is what I'm projecting, what is reflecting back at me, it's just a reflection and I'm projecting that stuff, I've got to accept it. Well, no, I don't, Paul. That's the whole point. Don't accept it because it's not acceptable. So I told myself off, give myself a slap and said, just acknowledge it, Cluffy. Acknowledge that it's happening. Acknowledge that that perception is what you're projecting. In some way, there's a teacher in this and we need to learn. And it was hard to take because excuses are a little bit easier, aren't they? We can fall in those, and I did. I'm right, they're wrong. The bullshit. And it took a bit of time. I have to say, it took a bit of time. It took a bit of a struggle to acknowledge that those things that were reflecting back at me were things that I'm projecting or things that I needed to work on. That's a slight bit of a reframe then. I had things if I worked on, what would happen? Well, if I worked on those, maybe that anger, that resentment, that disappointment would disappear. So I was doing one or two processes that I know, a bit of self-hypnosis and just doing things and then my journal and things like that. And then I thought, well, what could you do? What could you do? And I thought to myself, that's a question, isn't it? Oh, right. My beloved questions. Because I love questions, don't I? So I could ask questions in a quiet time or even self-hypnosis, which is just being quiet, isn't it? You're inside. You don't have to go deeply in hypnosis. You can just sit down and breathe and ask yourself a question. And I thought, what type of questions would be something which is going to move me forward? And obviously the first one might be something like, what can I learn from this? The learnings that when got would allow these behaviors, these thoughts, these horrible things to disappear. And I just let that one go. Just let it go inside. Because I wanted my unconscious mind to go and learn. Because it knew now that I had an intention to change. I had an intention to learn, to let go of the things and recognize and acknowledge that the things that I was doing was not acceptable, not appropriate. And it certainly wasn't in line with who I felt I really am. Certainly not anything to do with the best version of myself. Far from it. So then I thought, well, let's get a bit positive. Because if I've got those learnings, how would I like to react differently? Think about it, Cluffy, I said. If I was the best version of me, the real me, not the one out front here, but the real me, which is, I'll put in brackets, by the way, in my notes, is a work in progress. And that will always be a work in progress, won't it? We are always a work in progress. We've always got that little bit more, but we can enjoy that work as well. So we're not waiting to get to the end to enjoy. It's not a bloody journey. It's an adventure where we can enjoy every step of the way. So I thought to myself, how would I like to act or react differently if I was the real me, the best version of me at this moment in time? And I thought to myself, oh, maybe if I was more aware, maybe if I showed kindness, maybe if I had a bit of empathy. Ooh, that was hard, by the way, because I'm not good at empathy. I'm good at empathy if someone's really happy. I'll go and take that happiness and be with them. But if someone's having a hard time, I always think as a therapist, I don't need to feel their pain to help people with their pain. I just need to know they're in pain. And I believe them when they say they do, because they explain things. But also the empathy, this is the little bit of the empathy I hadn't really thought about and I should have done, because we should all over ourselves, because I think of perceptual positions, standing in somebody else's shoes to know the world they're walking in. I didn't know what they're going through at that time. We never know what other people are going through. And I tried to understand how people do the things they do. I couldn't get it totally right because I'm not them. But just having that thought of a bit of empathy with kindness, maybe compassion. I love compassion, by the way. I love compassion. And you see, every one of these would have been better than my current ways. Every one of them. Just being aware of what's happening and aware of what's happening in me. Aware of that. Those words were not nice, the vitriol. And if I was to link that awareness to kindness with a little bit of empathy and full of compassion, how would I have reacted? I think I'd have actually improved the real me, that work in progress. And this is all work in progress, you see. And I thought to myself, that's why these things are coming up. So I kept asking my unconscious mind to learn and consider how that anger, that hurt, that guilt, that remorse, sadness, all that stuff, how can I learn from that? And consider awareness, kindness, empathy, compassion, thoughtfulness, all those wonderful things, being centered, being aware, being in the moment, being mindful. There's so many other ways, so many better ways. So I just worked on that by thinking about that, thinking how it would be. I actually did a little visualization of just seeing myself, this work in progress, the real me, with awareness, with kindness, with empathy, with compassion, with everything else, and wondered how I would react and think. And it just was so different. And I thought to myself, just if I was to imagine that best version of myself and those other effects, the ones which were the excuses, which one would I choose? It's bloody obvious, isn't it? Which one would create the most wonderful change and the most wonderful adventure? It's a no-brainer, isn't it? And what would be the effects? And this is the great thing, I thought. What would be the effects, or the effect, but there'd be effects, plural, of instead of reacting with that old anger and vitriol, but acting with awareness, kindness, empathy, compassion, all that stuff, mindful? How would that spread through the rest of my life? Well, it's like that thing where the ripples of change, you never know how far they go. And I won't, but I know they will. Would they affect other people? Yes, they bloody would, in a good way. And the thing is, the biggest thing, which I left, it was a question to my unconscious mind. And I left it with my own answer, was, I'll think about that unconscious mind, my best friend, you and I. I just said to myself, when I see, if we view the two, the old way, and I'm calling it the old way now, the old way of having that horrible stuff in my head and thinking and acting and then taking it on the outside, or these alternative ways, awareness, kindness, empathy, compassion. And I want you to think of what you would be like, that best version of yourself, what you would be like, what behaviors, thoughts, beliefs, and emotions you would have instead, in place. And then ask yourself this question: which one protects you the best? That's right. Which one protects you the best? Because I thought, sometimes we think of anger protects us, but it bloody doesn't. But if you can just be aware, you're protected. If you can be kind, compassionate, mindful, if you can access all the wonderful, positive behaviors, beliefs, and emotions, that's where we're most protected, isn't it? Because that's where we grow. And we grow from that. And then, and there's the real kicker, then we go right back to the beginning. And the beginning is, the world will be my mirror, because I'll be looking back at me, at the best version of myself right now, projecting that nice stuff, that good stuff. Call it nice, because nice is a nice word, but the things that will make a better world. For me, a better world for others, and a better world on little old planet Earth. And I'll be perceiving that new stuff as well, because my focus of attention will be through the filters of compassion, awareness, kindness, all that stuff. And the thing is, I did a couple of processes, but the biggest process was just sitting down and thinking and asking those questions and then visualizing just how I want to be. That question got me to visualize, how would I like to be? How would the best version of myself, if I held myself up there for account, how would my best version act and react? And then which one keeps me safe? So something to think about. And you see, one of my meta bit, I always, when I've done some notes, I try to think from the outside. And it was simply better ways. It's always simply, it's not complicated. It's not rocket science. Coming back to being simple, because in simplicity there is genius. We know that. Good old Albie Einstein. And that was what came to me. I just got to simply find simple better ways. And the struggle disappears. Because we all struggle. But the struggle can disappear. And we can change if we put our mind to it. And I thought to myself, well, why is this important? Why is this important to anybody? And it was important for me to, and I don't like the word, to give hope, because that's not what I'm doing, but give an example, to share how simple ways and simple thinking and writing down these things and just holding yourself accountable, acknowledging what's going on, not accepting, and going, this isn't right. How can I change? Without going to deep hypnosis and finding the best hypnosis track. I love those type of things. That's what I do. And we can even do that still. But we can just do this. Everyone can change simply. And why was this important to me? And it's just cool. I just felt it grounds me. That was it. I just feel more grounded and I feel more centered. And I wanted to share that with you too. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that made you think. I hope you're going to think to those things that maybe it's hard to accept in us that we see in others, because they are just teachers coming along and go, hey, have a look at this. Because if you change that, the world will be different. Your world, their world, our world will be different. I'd love to know what you thought about that. You might say it's all bullshit, Paul. That's good. I'll take that on the chin if that's what you think. Or if it got you to think, or if it just resonated with you, I'd love to know that. Or if there's something that as it resonated, what did you think of differently to what I thought of, what I've shared? If you would love, well, if you could, if you would, it'd be really kind if you just shared that on an email to me. feedback@personaldevelopmentunplugged.com. I'd love to have your feedback, because with that feedback, it helps me to grow myself, but also helps to grow this podcast, because we're going to get better and richer subjects to think about, to look at, and find things that change it. So we can just sit down for a spell. That's all you have to do, sit down for a spell. Or you could just sit down for a change. because that's what we do. And I pinched those, by the way. I didn't make that. That was from Richard Bandler, one of the originators of NLP. Never take credit for things you didn't do, Cluffy. And also, if you would, just as I have just shared everything with you, I'd love you to share this episode. Tell people about this podcast, if you would. It helps it to grow, and it helps share the good intentions, and it shows your good intentions. So if you would, that would be great. So there you go. That's all I've got to say. All you've got to say, Cluffy. Now we'll be back. We'll be back. Hope you enjoyed that. Have more fun than you can stand. And be happy for no reason. Because it's time to fly. Ta-da.
Warning, you are now leaving the unplugged mind of Paul Clough. It's time to fly on your own. Be brave, my friend.
Personal Development Unplugged.